You're listening to the Cruise Tips TV Unplugged podcast. This week on the show, we're continuing our series on unexpected things that can ruin your vacation. Welcome to Cruise Tips TV Unplugged. I'm your host, Sherry, and we invite you to join our cruise-loving family as we travel the world creating cruise videos and vlogs. In this podcast, we talk tips, tactics, and strategies to help you make every cruise your dream cruise. Hey cruisers, welcome back to the podcast. It's Sherry here this week, all by myself. Wah, wah, wah. You know I prefer when Mr. Cruise Tips TV is here with me to record, but unfortunately he's got a little bit of a lingering cough. He's feeling fine, but it's really difficult to get through long periods of talking. So that is why we didn't have a show for you last week. We tried to hold out and hang in there and see if we could make it work, but we just couldn't. But rest assured, he is doing great and feeling well. But today, I'm going to be rocking it solo today, and we're going to talk about the third installment of this unexpected things that can ruin your cruise vacation series. We had a few podcasts about this a couple of weeks ago, and then there were some more topical things that came up, so we took a break from the series, but now we're going to close it out, and we're going to talk about those air travel issues that can really harsh your mellow. And air travel, I know you guys are probably fully aware of this. I don't need to remind you, it is rough these days. You are hearing about people getting in trouble with cancellations, there's strikes, there's luggage issues, there's overbooking. There's so many different things that can go wrong. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those air travel issues and potentially how to, because we can't always prevent them, but how to sort of, be prepared for them. And then if something does come up, how to sidestep it, what to do first, and really some strategies that can help you out if these things come up. Because a lot of us are planning flights to get to our cruise. So there's a lot of considerations. So I'm going to jump right in and talk a little bit about the first air travel problem that can affect you, and that is cancellations. I have a friend who she's flying to Japan, and she went to the airport yesterday. This was LAX, massive international airport, right? And her flight to Japan just completely got canceled, and she has to wait an entire day to get back on that flight. You guys, this stuff is happening. My son and I had it happen very recently. Flight got canceled. We were going somewhere together. We were delayed for 4 hours until they could get us on another flight. Lo and behold, this can happen to you at any time. You really have no way of knowing when this is going to happen. It could be that there's a weather delay. It could be that the flight isn't booked enough. And most commonly these days, what we're hearing is that it's like mechanical issues. So if you are trying to catch a flight to get to your cruise destination, the best practice, right, has always been make sure that you don't fly in the day of your cruise. But these days, people are more commonly saying, no way, man, I'm not flying in the day before my cruise. I'm going more like 48 hours to 3 days early in. And this is especially true if you are going somewhere like Europe, where we're going to talk a little bit about strikes and things like that in a bit here. But I can tell you that if you have the ability, the vacation time, the budget maybe for a pre-cruise hotel, and you can get into your cruise port just a couple days beforehand, it's really going to help you to relax as well. But considering the fact that it's not always possible, right? Life is busy. We have a limited number of vacation days, right? There are some other things that you can do if you can't book several days in advance. And one of the best things that you can possibly do, if you're worried about flight cancellations, because this does happen, you guys, is to book the first flight of the day. That might mean you have to get up really early to get to the airport and catch that flight. But the fact is, by doing that, you're simply building in a buffer of time. There are way more flights throughout the day, most likely, that you can jump onto if you have to. And the airlines tend to have fewer issues in the morning. A lot of times what happens is an aircraft may have come in the night before from a flight from somewhere else, and it's just sitting there waiting for you. So you are going to be avoiding a lot of the different problems that can occur by booking that first flight of the day, and you're really building in a lot more cushion time. The downside, is waking up early. I do not enjoy waking up early to catch a flight because, to be honest, I don't really sleep very well the night before. So for me, it's a downer, but sometimes it can be absolutely worth it. You can also, when you're booking, another thing that my travel agent taught me to do is to make sure that when you're searching for those flights initially, you might want to look for airlines that have multiple flights to that destination per day. Obviously, that's not always possible. You may have to do a connecting flight or go through a regional airport, or you may have just one flight a day. It's not always possible, but when it is, that's probably a good idea. The other thing you can do is monitor the weather. Is there an extreme storm coming? What that can happen in the summertime too. I'm not just talking about snow and rain and things like that, but those are some things that can kind of help you to get prepared and be ready in case there is a cancellation. These things can happen during any time of the year. They can happen summer. They can happen during the typical winter months when there's weather delays. But getting ahead of it and booking yourself into your destination as early as you can is the best strategy. If you're booking during the winter months, I'd say that's kind of a non-negotiable, right? Especially if you've been saving for a cruise for months, if not years, and getting to that cruise ship on time is contingent upon a flight that maybe gets you in just a little early, make sure that you get that flight to get you in a few days early so you have that buffer. So what do you do if you're in the airport and you hear that dreaded, oh man, you guys know the feeling, right? You hear that dreaded overhead announcement. Flight 1264 to Miami has been canceled. Please report to the customer service desk or call United Airlines for help. And you're just stuck. You're stranded. What do you do? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. But if you did book through a travel agent, the first thing you might want to do is try to contact them and see if they can help you. But if you booked independently, the best thing you can do is to try to get on the app, your airline app, and immediately book the next available flight. The idea is that when that cancellation announcement goes up, right, you're going to have hundreds of passengers doing the same thing, standing in line at guest services, getting online to chat with an agent, making a phone call, whatever it is. You want to be among the first people to try to catch that next flight available and hopefully have a little bit of seat choice. Usually at this point, you're really not going to have seat choice. But if there's any way that you can be among the first people jumping on the app and getting yourself on that next flight in the event of a canceled flight, it is going to be super helpful. Now, you may only be able to do that with your own airline. And so things could get kind of messy here. You may have to, consider other airlines and pay for it out of pocket and wait for reimbursement from the airline. But the bottom line is, I think the learning lesson here is don't wait for the airline to rebook you automatically. Now, if you're lucky enough to have some kind of status with your airline, and maybe you have a customer service desk that can help you, or you have a lounge that you can go to where they have dedicated reps that can help to rebook you. Of course, you're going to want to do that, but not all of us have that luxury, right? So you want to get on it and try to get yourself rebooked as soon as possible. Now, if it's looking dire, if it's looking like this delay is really going to set you back and you could potentially miss your cruise or be late, you definitely do want to contact that number that the cruise line gives you on your passage contract or on your ticket and let them know, hey, I could be delayed. Here's the situation. Have me, kind of make a note of this. Your travel agent may be able to do the same thing and contact their, particular team of people that they reach out to in the event of an emergency and let them know that this is going on. And then you could find out the latest possible time that you could get to the cruise ship the next day if you're flying in just that one day early. Also, don't forget to document any expenses that come up as part of this process. So say, for example, your flight is delayed and it's going to be 5, 6, or maybe even 24 hours. There are laws that protect you. So essentially you can, and I don't want to get into details about this because it really varies by airline and it varies by circumstance, but you may be eligible for some credit, for some miles, or for some reimbursement for the inconvenience. And of course, if the airline isn't willing to do that, it is possible that your travel insurance provider may do that. So document any expenses, whether it's food, hotel, anything that may be going on get those receipts saved somewhere so that you have some documentation to provide if you file a claim either with the travel insurance or with the airline for compensation for that tardiness. And there are ways to contact airlines if your flight is delayed more than like 4 to 6 hours. So, bottom line here, book and get yourself on that first flight of the day if you can. Get yourself into your cruise port a couple of days early if you can, and get your travel agent involved if they helped you to book your flight. I think that's the takeaway here. So the next thing that can impact your flight, that can totally ruin your vacation, and this is a big one, you guys, this is getting more common. Airline strikes, labor disputes. You'll hear about these sudden work stoppages, and these are going to be maybe a group of pilots. It could be flight attendants. It could be ground crew. And these things can happen, but generally speaking, you know when they're coming. They actually have organized and planned strikes and disputes in the European countries, and it happens a lot in Europe. So if you're flying there to cruise, like I mentioned earlier, you got to think about flying in 2, 3, 4, 5 days early, not only to enjoy yourself pre-cruise, but in order to take control if a strike like this happens. Obviously, in the United States, it's a little bit more rare. In the US, what's more likely to happen is that your flight crew may be unable to come to work because they've worked too many hours. And that can cause some kind of a delay in your flight. And that can be a whole different story while the airlines find another flight crew due to the labor laws that protect those pilots and those flight crews, which are probably a good thing. We certainly don't want drowsy pilots out there flying. So the best line of prevention, if you suspect that a strike could impact you, is to make sure that you monitor the news. So the airline news, the labor negotiations, these things can generally speaking be monitored before travel. And it is possible that the airlines might even notify you. So you might want to consider booking with airlines that have good labor relations in general, that have fewer instances of these strikes, but also have some backup flight options researched in advance. And of course, make sure that your travel insurance covers that kind of an issue. I have a friend who lives in Canada, and she is very accustomed to dealing with strike situations when she's going over to Europe, and she flies with Air Canada. They have very good communication at Air Canada about this, and sometimes they'll even rebook you. But you can take control of the situation, rebook yourself on your own flight if you feel that it's necessary to use another airline and you have that kind of flexibility. Now, the reality, unfortunately, when it comes to kind of how to handle this, you guys, is that airlines aren't usually required to compensate for strikes. Now, they have to reimburse you for what you paid, of course, but you may be stuck having to book those alternative flights and book them at your own expense. So you want to have that research done. Contact the other airlines immediately and check out those available seats. And potentially, you might even need to consider alternative airports or a different transportation method if it exists. Some people have taken trains, buses, rental cars to their destination, even if it means it's 12, to 16-hour drive or whatever. So again, there's a recurring theme here, right, of like building in extra time. Now, the next thing that can totally put a damper on your vacation, this is one that I'm hearing a lot about this year, friends. This is impacting people who are flying to their cruises a lot. And that is lost luggage. And what does that lost luggage have in it? Unfortunately, everything, right? It has all of your cruise essentials. You've checked your bags. You have everything in them from your formal wear to potentially some of your medications, which you should keep with you at all times, by the way. But all of your clothing, your shoes, your undergarments, all the stuff you need for your cruise. And it is a huge problem if the airline loses all your luggage. So what do you do about this, right? You cannot predict when your luggage is going to get lost. One thing you can do is you can pack some cruise essentials in a carry-on bag. I'm not suggesting that you don't check a bag because I think for most people, it's not realistic or enjoyable to go carry-on only to a cruise unless you are a seasoned traveler and you've really got this thing down and you're willing to do laundry. Most people do check a bag, but think about potentially taking a carry-on bag that has the following items in it, okay? obviously your medications, right? Anything that is critical to your health, you've got to have that with you at all times. Keep it with you. You might also want to have one formal night outfit and pair of shoes. Of course, your cruise documentation, that should be your boarding pass, your passport, all that stuff should be with you at all times. And you might even want to consider something like swimwear, underwear, and another day one kind of a casual outfit. And of course, if there is anything irreplaceable, it should never, ever, ever be put into your checked luggage. That includes jewelry, mementos, keepsakes, anything like that should be kept with you no matter what, right? So best thing you can do is assume it's going to happen. Assume your luggage is going to be lost. Take a small carry-on bag with you, whatever you can physically handle. You know, if it's too much for you to put something larger in the overhead bin, try to get it into a small personal item bag, maybe with a little set of wheels on it. Slide it in front of you. But at least you'll have some peace of mind if you're going to have to deal, unfortunately, with replacing clothing and things like that. Now, if this happens to you and your luggage does not make it to the cruise ship, which it may not, the cruise ship will have to leave, and at some point the airlines can only get it to you so fast. So at some point, you're going to have to go into damage control mode, and you're going to have to figure this out on your own, right? The good news is most of the cruise companies are very well versed at handling these situations. It happens a lot, and they'll usually rally to help find you some essentials, but they're not going to be the things that you want. They may not be in the size that you want. I often have cruisers who tell me that they have a specific type of size of clothing that they wear. Maybe they are a plus size cruiser. Maybe they wear a size, a 4 shoe. Like I wear like a 5.5. It'd be impossible for me to find shoes if they didn't get with me to my cruise. You may have issues with that. So think about getting some stuff into your carry-on bag if you can. And of course, if it does happen to you, as soon as you find out that your luggage is lost, you need to file a claim immediately with the airline. Now, a lot of people take pictures of their luggage while they're packing. So they get the luggage packed, they stand those bags up, and they get pictures on their phone of what their luggage looks like, because it's so much more helpful if the tracking tag were to fall off of your luggage, and that's how it sort of got lost, and you need to identify what the bag looks like. You might want to have a photograph of that ready to rock and roll to show to the luggage representative down by the baggage carousel in the event that you have to file a lost luggage claim. And those detailed descriptions of the bags, those photos are going to be so, so helpful. Also, if you're in this situation and you think that you may just be stuck, try to purchase what you can at your departure port. Let's just say you're flying out of Miami or Seattle. Those are big metropolitan cities with lots and lots of supplies. Grab what you can, because you may only be able to get very limited things once you're on that cruise ship. They might have some formal wear, they may have some funky resort wear, swimwear, stuff like that, but they are most assuredly not going to have things like undergarments, right? Shoes in your size. They will not sell anything other than maybe the spare pair of flip-flops. And honestly, most cruise lines, as far as I know, don't sell shoes these days. So you want to be prepared and get what you can in your departure port if you see this coming. Don't get on the cruise ship thinking your luggage is going to catch up with you, because it's very unlikely to happen. And of course, keep receipts so that you can file that claim with your airline. The airline technically should handle it for you, but if you do have travel insurance and it's limited, you may be able to file a claim there too. So, see, guys, this is no fun without Mr. Cruise Tips TV. I'm just all alone. I feel like I'm talking to myself, but it gives me comfort to know that you all are out there driving around in your cars or listening to me in your earbuds, and I'm not really alone. All right, let's talk about the last 2 flight disasters that can happen. Now, I don't think I've ever had this one happen to me. Have you? You have to DM me and let me know if you've ever had this happen to you. But how about overbooking, where you're denied boarding? You are bumped from your flight because the airline somehow overbooked that flight, and you are now in big trouble, potentially missing that cruise departure. So ways around this. This is tough, right? Make sure that you book through the airline directly or a travel agent wherever you can. And once you've booked the flight, you definitely want to check in online exactly 24 hours before departure. You do not want to be pushing your check-in time and be one of the last people to check in. Now, I don't know if there's any truth to the fact that the people who check in first are not going to get bumped, but it would make me feel a lot better knowing I had checked in very promptly at that 24-hour point. The other thing you can do is arrive at the airport early. And, if you have to pay for a seat assignment, let's just say the airline that you're flying with doesn't offer seat assignments, if it gives you peace of mind, you might want to consider paying for that seat assignment in advance too. And definitely be sure that if you fly with the same airline frequently, make sure that you're a part of their frequent flyer program. Some of them will offer better seats, better priority boarding over time, and you want to be in that group of people who have earned some loyalty. Of course, that is not always possible, right? If you have to deviate from your usual airline because it's the only airline flying to that destination, of course, there's nothing that you can do. But checking in for your flight 24 hours departure is definitely a good plan. Now, you also want to make sure that you research your rights in these situations, because if there's an overbooking situation and you're denied boarding, you have the right to compensation. Domestic flights can be well over $1,000 for bumping. International flights, even more than that. So, the first thing you want to do is get yourself on the next flight, right? You need to negotiate with that gate agent or the customer service person to get a flight taken care of, but also get educated about what your compensation rights are. And if you'd like to, ask for it right at the time that this happens to you and find out what you're entitled to and push it a little bit. I would always try to say, okay, thanks for that offer, but can we do a little bit better? And be ready to do that. Now, if this delay is going to cause you to miss your cruise, you are going to want to make sure that you request hotel accommodations and meal vouchers so that you can get yourself comfortable at a hotel while you get, reacquainted with how you're going to get home. You don't want to be stranded at an airport waiting. But again, always, 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 these problems can become much less emergent if you have built in a nice cushion time before you need to be on that flight to your cruise. So if you can do one day in advance, that's all you can do. That's great. But if you can do 2 or more days, that is even better, especially if you're flying, guys, during winter. And there could be weather delays. You could be stranded for a couple of days waiting for a storm to clear up. This happens a lot flying through like Colorado. If you're flying through Denver, you'll have sometimes days and days of delays there. East Coast is very common for those delays as well. And, what about like airport security issues and delays? This has actually happened to us. We've had cruise security delays and we've had some interesting things happen going through airport security, but these things can happen. You can have extended security delays. And the problem with those is a lot of times they can cause people to miss their connections. It may not be that initial flight there's a problem, but you might miss a connection. We've had it both ways where it's been really touch and go. One time in London, we had a connecting flight and they had some sort of a between flights inspection where they emptied my husband's backpack and we were so close to missing a flight. These things can definitely happen. They can also happen in busy airports. We had this happen one time in Japan where we pulled into the Haneda airport more than 3 hours before our international flight and there was something wrong with their check-in kiosks. So there was a line that stretched almost the length of the entire airport of people waiting to be manually assisted. And it came down to a photo finish where they were pulling people who needed to be on the flight that we were on out of the line, rushing them through a line, and then we had to run to the gate. These things can absolutely happen with software issues, security screening delays, TSA screening, all kinds of things. And believe me, internationally, it can happen even more. Some international airports are known for being absolutely amazing and even more efficient and high-tech than U.S. airports, but a lot of times they're also considering international security as you pass through and connect in those airports. So moral of the story, the prevention here is make sure that if it's an international flight, you are at that airport 3 hours early. And I do not mean 3 hours before departure time. I mean 3 hours before you are supposed to board. And I know it's extreme, but you will be so much more relaxed if a problem occurs, right? Also, if you can enroll in TSA PreCheck or Global Entry, sometimes that can help, not always, but it can. Also, if you can keep your carry-ons light, especially internationally, and make sure that you don't have any liquids or electronics in your carry-on bag, just don't even bother with them because some countries are so strict about removing electronics, removing, liquids and putting them in teeny tiny baggies. You might want to just pack that stuff, friends. And better yet, leave the high value electronics at home so that you don't have to deal with that. And of course, always check the websites for these airports and for the country's requirements. In the US, you're going to be checking the TSA website for restrictions, but if you're flying abroad, you can also check those airport websites and see what it is that is going to make it more comfortable for you to travel. What do they prohibit? What do they want you to limit? How is that going to go? And take as little as you can with you through those connecting flights. Now, another thing I would recommend too is when you're booking your flight, consider the fact that a 45-minute connection, anything, for outside of the US, anything under 2 hours is unacceptable. You should almost never book a flight with a short connection outside the US under any circumstances. My rule of thumb, my absolute minimum is 2 hours because I have had issues where your plane will, for example, park on the tarmac. You will walk off the plane and get in a bus just to get to the airport. You don't have that bridgeway or that, that instant connection into the airport, and you have to build in so much time for that. Then you have to go through security again, potentially catch another bus out to the tarmac to get onto your plane. It's just complicated. And the more you travel globally, the more you realize you cannot ever do a short connection. So if for some reason you do, though, miss your connection due to security delays, the airline is typically responsible for rebooking you. You're in the airport, you're in the system, so you want to speak up and make sure you get some help. But it's very, very important that you stay calm with the security personnel and comply with their requests. As much as you may be frustrated, so are hundreds of other people who are rushing through the process, and you are not going to do any good if you get grumpy with them. And of course, as always, you want to document the excessive delays. Anything that seems super unreasonable, make sure that you document it, and you may have a potential claim. Lastly, this is a scary one, guys. What happens if you have a passport or some kind of a documentation issue at the airport, right? You pull into the airport, maybe you're going on your honeymoon, and you walk up to the check-in desk and you discover that there is a problem with your passport. Your maiden name is on your passport, but the flight was booked under your married name, and you are in trouble, right? This stuff can generally be prevented. So name issues, visa expiration issues, other types of documentation expirations, usually checking those passport expiration dates in advance can be prevented. Also, you've got to make sure that your name on your passport matches the name on your ticket. It is absolutely critical, and a good travel agent can help you with this for sure. Another common problem that happens with passports is passport expiration dates in advance. So what I mean by that is that many countries require 6 months of validity before that passport expires. So let's just say your passport expires on December 31st of 2025. Many countries, including Mexico, by the way, will require that your passport did not expire less than 6 months before that. Did I say that right? Is it less than or more than? So your passport, you can't travel after June if it expires in December, is basically what I'm trying to say. If your passport expires in 4 months from the time of travel, that passport is as good as invalid. So assume that every country has that 6-month rule, and make sure that you renew your passport a good 8 to 9 months before it expires so that you don't have an issue with that 6-month validity rule. Of course, check for visa requirements. Most of the time when you book a flight or a cruise, they will inform you of visa requirements. Some of the cruise companies will handle visas for you on the ship, and they make it very easy. I know that cruising to Asia and Japan, a lot of them, if you're, dipping into Vietnam or something like that, they'll handle it with you on the ship, take your passport, get it taken care of. But I think the takeaway for this is make sure that that passport expiration is within range, and make sure that the name on your ticket matches the name on your passport, and it needs to be exact. This is unfortunately something that you may need to micromanage with a travel agent. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but you got to check it, friends. Also, if you have some kind of a third party booking your ticket for you, let's just say you're going on a corporate incentive cruise. Maybe you're going on a trip that your company booked for you and some other person is booking your flight. You need to check that ticket and make sure that that ticket exactly matches what's on your passport, or you could be turned away. I would also, for this type of a thing, I would consider trip interruption insurance in case something happens that can cover documentation issues. Obviously, check with that insurance company and make sure that that policy covers it. But I think the bottom line is, if you can't resolve it in time, worst case scenario, you have to cancel your cruise. Some kind of a trip interruption insurance could help you to get some of the money back for your cruise and help you to file a claim. But bottom line here, friends, this kind of stuff can happen. Flight issues are so relevant right now. They're happening to people. The canceled flight thing is rampant. We have got a lot of documentation too that, shows that the overbooking problem is probably going to continue for a while, as are those types of strikes and delays that can happen in other countries, especially in Europe. So hopefully we'll see improvements with it, but assume that you need to take control of these things and work with your travel agent to get yourself into your port of call as soon as possible. And just know too, you guys, these air travel issues, these are just among the most common cruise vacation disruptors. This is normal. This happens to everybody. So try to take control. Try to remember the importance of getting into your port at least a day or two early, and always book yourself some travel insurance. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. Hopefully we'll have Mr. Cruise Tips TV back with us next week. If you have any thoughts on this, be sure to comment on it when I post it on Facebook. And until next time, we'll see you on the high seas. Thanks for listening to Cruise Tips TV Unplugged. If you like our show and want to know more, check us out at CruiseTipsTV.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram by searching Cruise Tips TV. We'd love if you'd leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, subscribe to the show, and tune in next week. Until next time, we'll see you on the high seas.